Steve, how you doing?
Busy, man. Just got done with practice this morning and stuff like that and weights. So chasing my own kiddos around and my own program's kids. So been busy.
Yeah, I bet. I know you are. And I get to see you a lot during the summers, and I really cherish our family days together that we get to spend. So full disclosure, we have a lot of contacts and connections that are mutual. We spend a lot of time together in the summers, and I really enjoy that. I get to see our kids grow up together, and we've been able to see each other grow up since college. But here we are. We've been talking about this for a while, and I'm really excited about what the community of Harvey County is going to learn, and even further reaching than that, because you've got a huge network. You've done some amazing things in your career. So those people that don't know who you are, Steve, can you introduce yourself?
Yeah. Name's Steve Martin. Grew up in Annandale, Kansas. I'm 42 years old and the father of four and husband. And a lot of, I would say a lot of people say I got four kids, but I really got about 108 right now, being head football coach at Wichita Northwest High School. This is my 12th year here, and that's pretty surreal to know that I've been there. It feels like we just moved back from little old Troy, Kansas, where I started my head coaching career. So that's who I am. I'm just a down-to-earth guy. I'm your average Joe. You wouldn't know who I was sitting next to you at church or walking by you in the mall. It's just I don't like to bring a lot of attention to myself. I try to put all our stuff on our program on our kids and really try to spotlight our kids. My upbringing and stuff and the coaches that I've had and be around some amazing influencers and leaders have always done a good job of deflecting all the attention off them. And so I was very lucky from a very early age to learn that from my family, my dad, my brothers. And so it's something that, has been a passion now of trying to develop men and trying to get them to open up and realize that the sky's the limit for them.
That's awesome. And that's a very humble opening for yourself, as I knew you would. That's why I'm going to take this little segment here. So those of you that don't know Steve, he's a super smart individual. Anybody that knows him will tell you that he's very third, fourth gear kind of guy, 3D chess. He's never looking at anything one-dimensional. You've always seen the long game, always. And I've always admired that about you. Again, I think it probably comes from some of your upbringing and growing up on the farm and with your dad and all the successes and failures that he was able to power through to give you the lifestyle that I think he probably would have wanted more so. But you also were gifted the opportunity for him to say, hey, go do you. Yeah. And that's hard to do when you come from an environment like you. So Annandale it's its own pocket of its own. It's a great community. Anybody that is in Kansas and in our area knows about that. And what a treat to know people from that and in that community. And I don't want to get too far in that. I think we'll do this some more in the future. But I framed it to somebody like this not too long ago. When I look at the reality of the people that God's placed around me, for some reason, I get to be around some freaks. Okay. And so as we're sitting here in the pool enjoying talking about one of your state championship pursuits, when we got to go to a game, which I'm convinced that I'm blowing that for you.
You're not allowed to go anymore.
I'm not allowed. And it's going to be hard because Brock's going to be there, right?
You would live stream it.
I will. And I'm like, dude, I got to go to Brock's games, but I'm not going to do that to the team. So we're going to have to be sending Brock messages. But at the end of the day, though, I'm sitting here looking at the journey and how many times you've made that state title game. And I know where your passion is to push that over the line for your guys. And you've built one heck of a team around you, like you do, because you do what you do. And I hope we get into a little bit of this new person you've brought on recently, if you're comfortable and ready to talk about that. And if not, we'll move through that. But the reality is for anybody that knows football in the state of Kansas, you are for sure one of the top coaches in the state of Kansas, and your record and your background and your coaching lineage says that. So it's not an opinion. If anybody that's been in the league, you are fighting against the best of the best every Friday night. And that's what you do. And you excel, and your winning records speak for themselves. Which means if you really step back, because we always like to think that all the talent's everywhere else and not in our own backyard, you're one of the best coaches in the United States. And in football, American football, the United States is the thing. Right. That's where it's at. So you are, in essence, one of the best coaches in the world. And I know you're humble and you don't like to hear that stuff. And I've said that to several people around you, and sometimes you get taken aback a little bit. But the reality is we have talent all around us. And I love that I get to sit with men like yourself as you mentor and coach and steward kiddos forward in life. And you use football as a conduit to build people, but you are about winning.
Right.
And you teach them that you go after this life to win.
Right.
And you do not always win. And if anybody knows you, you don't take that lightly.
Right.
That's a hard thing for you to take a loss.
Yeah.
But you always say, what did I do? What could I do better? What did we not do? How can we get better? And the people who surround you, they get that. And so I'm really excited to unfold this conversation. So what we're going to do is start lighter. We're going to take it back to a light thing. Hey, Steve, what's your favorite color?
Well, you mentioned grow up in Andale, so I'd have to go black, and I'm a big guy, so I'll take the slimming. Anytime I get into a black shirt, it just is clashing with navy and gold right now at Northwest, so I don't really get to wear a lot of black clothing, but my favorite color is black. I don't know, it's just something I grew up with. So,
yeah.
It's a close second is navy blue. But I think it's normally wherever I'm coaching is my favorite color.
Yeah, there you go. Well, I tell you, it's pretty intimidating coming on the football field. You got that all black coming out.
100%. It's our favorite uniform at Andale. So,
yeah.
If there was a way to incorporate it with navy and gold, I would. It clashes. But black's always been my favorite color for whatever reason.
Yeah. I see Bethel moving in that direction. I'm curious to see if they let them do that, but that'll be interesting to watch. So this is really kind of a dumb question if anybody that knows you, but sometimes I've been surprised. What's your favorite sport?
Well, of course, it'd be football, and number one, it's because of the life lessons that it brought me, and the teamwork, everything that you've encompasses football is just the getting 11 guys on one side of the field to put away personal goals, struggles, whatever, to focus on one thing is pretty special. And then when you bring in a defense and a special team. And stuff that the people that we bring together, such as, the time I had in college, and that, and I'm sure we're going to talk about that in a little bit. But, it's pretty special when you can get a group of men, and a lot of times football guys are alpha males, to put away their own ego and to come together for one mission and focus on a process is pretty special. Not that other sports don't teach that. My daughter plays soccer, so there's a whole thing. It's just different. I think it's just a different type of animal. It's probably the closest thing to a combat sport, as you have, for someone other than going in the Marines or Air Force. The life lessons that you can learn about yourself and other people is remarkable.
That's so interesting. Combat sport. A lot of combat sports, the ones that we like to put those people, the Sugar Ray Leonards and the Mike Tysons and the Conor McGregors, there's a one-on-one type of thing. But This is a combat sport where you got 11 brothers all, at any given time, switching in and out. And that's an interesting way to look at it. But I tell you what, if you played the game, you get what we're saying.
Yeah, and now, with you look at the things that are happening in the college sport world with the NIL stuff. I mean, this is the closest thing getting back to Rome and the Colosseum of having pure entertainment on blood and guts and gore, and that's football. That's the game of football. If you've played it, you understand there's no way around any of those things. It's just there, and you're under the microscope at all times, at every level now, from youth to the biggest level at the NFL.
And one of the greatest things I like, and martial arts guys, boxers, kickboxers, they'll get this. You're going to put people on their rear, but you will be put on your rear.
Oh yeah.
And you just got to take it and go.
You're going to get knocked down, and that's another thing about being life. You're going to get knocked down, and no matter how many times you get knocked down, if you can get up and keep dusting yourself off and keep charging forward, good things are going to eventually happen.
That's right.
So that's why it's so great for me.
That's awesome. All right, here's another one. Muscle car, luxury sedan, or truck? I know this one.
I gotta go truck. I drove my Ram out here. It's probably my fifth Ram. I'm a Dodge fan. I started out with one of my older brothers was a diesel mechanic, and he always drove Dodges, and me always wanting to be around him has kind of been around that. But Natalie, my wife, has her Charger, so we have a little bit of muscle car-esque, I guess you could say. But yeah, I'm a truck guy.
Right on. So take me back to a 10, 11-year-old Steve. We're going to get into your childhood a little bit here. If I knew you at 10, 11 years old, Steve, who were you?
I'd say a pretty selfish jerk. I was the youngest of eight. My next closest sibling, so I would call what I would say oops. Mom and dad attribute it to Father Eck, trying to get the Roman Catholics out in Andale to realize that they're there for having babies. And mom and dad had seven before me. So my next closest sibling, my sister Michelle, who's the principal at Andale, is 10 years exactly older than me. So it's such a gap that, I came from a hardworking dad, entrepreneur in the farming world, mom that was a stay-at-home mom that cooked amazing, if you can't tell by my stature. But I was so far off that I grew up so different than my other siblings that I was kind of the spoiled brat. I was almost like the grandkid to my parents. I actually have a niece that's older than me, a year older than me, who has kids, out there right now too. So, the way I grew up was a little bit different. I wouldn't say entitled, because that's a careful word to say, but I definitely know that I grew up a lot different than my siblings did, and there was some resentment from some older siblings for that too. So I admit it. I know how I was. I know who I was.
Yeah.
But it's about growth. And I'd feel like people would say, that they've seen a different side of me in this realm, but I still have some of that selfish qualities, I guess you could say, and you could say it in how we compete and how I coach.
Yeah. Did that carry over to high school, your personal perception of yourself with your buddies in high school? Like if we were buddies in high school, who would have Steve been? Our sophomore, junior year in high school, who were you?
I think it's that guy that had very high goals. I think I was more of I wouldn't say a self-centered point. I was, playing high school sports that kind of gets torn down to you. But, when we start talking about my childhood, there's a point in my life where a guy got to quit being that selfish little kid growing up and wanting and always asking for everything from your parents. And then your dad says, you're not sitting in the house anymore. You're coming to work on the farm. And then I think that was a big shift, and it took me a while to adjust to that. But I appreciate those times now, because I don't think I would be even close to where I am now in career or as a dad or as a husband to Natalie. I don't think I'd been, the same guy. I don't think I would have been worth anything for anybody at the time. So
that's interesting. So as you go through that high school stage, and I met a few of your buddies, and we've gotten to hang out together in some special events and things for you. You go into college. Tell me about that experience going from Andale to Bethel College.
That was a big eye-opening experience for me. And going from a community where it's 100% white, Caucasian, maybe 98% of the community's Roman Catholic. And then all of a sudden you're going to, even though it's 30, 40 minutes away, you're going to Bethel College, who is a world in itself, of all the international students, the Mennonite background there. It was different, different races and creeds. And I mean, it was very eye-opening. It was something I felt like growing up that I got the gift from my mom, I think, of being able to get along with everybody and finding similarities in other people and being able to resonate with that and being able to know their struggle or where they came from and be able to transform that and take that on myself and go, that's just like this. This is how I grew up. So I processed everything, from a lot of friends, yourself, coming from a way different background than I did. Some friends of mine like Eric Moore down in Fort Worth, Reggie and those guys. Mm-hmm. And then being able to still know at home that one of my still best friends today and on my coach staff, Zach Westhoff, who grew up in the same town like I did in southeastern Kansas at St. Paul. So, it was eye-opening. It was very eye-opening. And, I contribute all of my success right now to that background I had with a lot of my classmates and teammates that I met at Bethel. And that networking really got me started in the game because of that background. I didn't know it at the time, but I found out later on there was a connection, and that's probably how I got my foot in the door as a head coach.
That's awesome. And shout out to all our Bethel brothers and sisters.
Yeah.
Zach, we love you, dude. Thank you for being a consistent dude like you are. And we had some great memories together too. So I can't wait to see you again. It was nice to see you a couple weeks ago. So anyways, I always enjoy seeing you guys work together. And we have some other friends just like you and Zach that are teamed up and building other men in other places of this country. And it's pretty cool to watch you guys operate and do what you do. And such a selfless, gritty group of guys that we went through our life with. And I'll tell you what, Bethel's selection process is very interesting, and they've tightened it down even more. It's really interesting to talk to Tony Hoops and Stokes and what they're doing out there right now, and their ability to be selective, because we don't bring in the masses like other people do. But when you talk about bringing in quality individuals, I don't know if me and you can roll through our roller decks and find pretty much the top of any field of person just through our 4 to 6 years that we were in and around that campus, where we have literally the best in industry on all different kinds of levels. Isn't that weird?
Well, I think it just goes back to the mission that, when you're there and you're a 19, 20, 21-year-old kid on that campus, you're going, man, I wish we were like at K-State, and go party and be around 20,000 people. And God, my professor knows when I'm not going to be there. And, and they're calling your room because you didn't make it that morning for whatever reason. And, I don't think you appreciate it. But, I tell people that I don't know if I would have graduated from college if it wasn't for Bethel College and my relationship with Clint Brown, who's at K-State now, and Coach Moore. They gave me a second chance, and we'll probably get into that here as well. But, those guys mean a lot to me because I quit on myself and realized some things with my dad, and that came back. Yeah. And so, it's a special place. And I think that might not just be at Bethel, that might happen at other, smaller schools like that. But Bethel meant a lot to me. I mean, that's where I met you, who introduced me to my wife, and my kids. It's a special place. It's definitely something that knows that I contributed that those relationships and that education to where I am today. I know that for a fact.
Yeah, and it's a choice that we make, right? A lot of us, we all have choices, and our world is as big as we make it. Yeah. And again, I was talking about, I'm sitting across from one of the best coaches in the state of Kansas right now, hands down. In my opinion, you are the best coach, but we'll battle that out because there's other people that'll say differently. And you have talent out here that you go up against, and you would want it that way because you don't want to take it any other way because you're competitive, and you wouldn't breathe without that, even whether you know it or not. I watched you for the last 23 years of our lives. Right. Absolutely. Yep. And I've seen what you do, but I'm going to take a step back and slow this down a little bit. And you won't be a pansy. I've seen it. We know the ones that know that. But there is your mom and dad are very special people. Yep. From a special generation. Yep. And whenever you talk about your dad, I see something click inside of you. It's deep. Yeah. It's very deep. Yeah. And when you talk about having a mentor and a leader of that type and that caliber in your life, and when he was mature while he was bringing you up, because you came later in their lives when they had gone through so much life. Right. As a farmer, he's seen it all. Right. Literally. Yeah. And he's fought through the darkest clouds that most people can't even comprehend, because it's all out there. Right. And he was able to get through all those things and set up a legacy up for you guys. Yep. 100%. And so knowing that, and you got all that greatness in your family lineage through him and through the people before him, and I know you get this. That's why we do what we do. Then you match them up with Coach Brown and Coach Moore and all these leaders that have come through the football hemisphere, if you will, that help raise you and grow you. It really does come down to the teachings you've got and the foundations that your dad and mom set up for you. Right. Dude, what are those key points that you would like to share with the community of how you get fired up when you talk about your dad?
Well, growing up, like I said, Dad was always that guy where, at the time, I mean, if my brother and sisters watch this, I'd probably be off. I don't know. I think Dad owned maybe 300, 500 acres, and it was a small family farm. It was ran by my brothers. My brother, who a lot of them went into the diesel mechanic side and worked at the local John Deere, where, growing up, they did a lot of sharecropping for my grandpa and my aunts and uncles. And eventually my brother started buying land as they set themselves up financially to do so. But, you know, the thing that I learned from my dad was, when I'm growing up and I'm younger, and dad was the guy that I felt like he missed a lot of stuff because of what he was doing for my family. But I knew that when he would make some special, special circumstances to get some stuff, was my dad president every basketball game on Saturday mornings? I don't think so. He had stuff to do, and it's things like that you appreciate that more. But there was an incident that happened where, and around I might have been my sixth grade summer, my fifth grade summer, I just did something stupid. We just got in trouble, and mom said, "Hey, you're going out and work with dad." And I remember going out there and getting just chewed from one end to the other of that shop. And since then, it was expected that I wasn't going to be sitting on the house, whining about not getting to play my Nintendo. It was, hey, you're going to get on the farm, you're going to learn to work. And at that time, I hated it. I thought my dad was a hard ass, so to speak, which he was. He had to be. He raised, 5 other brothers who were pretty ornery as well. And then my 2 sisters. But, he had to be that figurehead. He had to be the discipline, because if anybody knows Carol Martin, is that discipline wasn't Carol Martin's strength. It was loving and nurturing and just a big support staff. And so, dad, dad knew I wanted nothing to do with that farm. I was not going to graduate from high school and say, "Dad, I want to be your right-hand man out here." My oldest brother and a couple of my brothers, I knew that was the avenue they wanted to take. And it was a hard lifestyle. It was a different, my brother, literally my oldest brother, John, who has passed away about 10 years now. That was what John wanted. John wanted to inherit the farm and take over. That's what John wanted to do. And that was completely opposite of me. If dad said, "Hey, you're done," I was sprinting in the house to take a shower to get the hell out of there. I did not want to be out there. And so that pushing from dad was always, well, then you need to get an education, and this is who you needed to be. And, looking back, I was very, very opportunistic, because my mom, just to help make ends meet with insurance, at the time being an entrepreneur, dad, worked for Renwick Schools and drove a bus, just to make ends meet, and probably for mom to get out of the house too, and she drove the bus forever till about the day she died, was a bus driver for Renwick. And what was special about that is mom always drove our football teams to games. And that was where I got to meet a big influence in my life, Matt McKee, who was out at Halstead, and who was an assistant and principal at the diocese schools of southern Kansas. And so I was been able to be around Matt, and it started to get about second grade. I also had a notebook on me, and I was starting to draw plays, and it was pretty cool to fast forward that and be able to have my mom kept that thing. I don't know how or why, where she found that, but when my mom passed away, we were cleaning out my mom's house, my mom and dad's farmhouse, and my sister found that book. Man, that was so emotional for me, because, I didn't want to get on here and cry about this, but the influence and the belief that they just drove and drove and drove was very powerful, because at the time, I don't think I had the backbone to go for it. And going and growing up and being that kind of black sheep, so to speak, of the family, I still feel that way. But to go and fast forward kind of through the college years, after my freshman year where I met you guys, and, I came back after the first year. I hated that place. It sucks, and I don't want to be at Bethel, and I don't like who I'm up there with. It's boring. There ain't nothing to do. Well, I came back for a year, and I went to school at WSU, and that was a gosh darn travesty, waste of money of going to WSU. I think I maybe got 2 C's and 2 D's and went, what is this crap? Like, I don't even have to go to this class and I can get a C. That sounds good to me, but at the time I was working at the co-op because I did not want to work on the farm. I did not want to do anything out there.
Mm-hmm.
And, I thought I was pretty smart and lived with a couple buddies off, around Goddard area. And we just partied and went to school and nothing came out of it. But I was approached by a youth coach and said, hey, since you're not playing football, come coach for me. And I was able to coach our junior high football team. At the time out of A&L was the Braves still, an organization that I played with. It was just 7th and 8th grade. We didn't have youth football when I was growing up until 6th grade. And he played for the Braves in the Catholic Parochial League in Wichita. And that's where I fell in love with coaching. I kind of got that fire back. And I always wanted to coach since that 2nd grade in that notebook. But Dad said, you're not going to get anywhere coaching, sitting here working at the co-op, taking classes at WSU. Like, what are you doing? And made a difficult phone call to call Coach Brown and say, Coach, I made a huge mistake. And you need to get, and I need to get back there. And he goes, yeah, we know, and if anybody knows Coach Brown, he didn't say it in those nice of terms, but it was what I needed to hear. And, I was able to come back and play for Clint and Coach Mike Moore at the time, who, what a instrumental leader. I know you're sitting across from you. I know the impact Coach had on you and a lot of our guys, because a lot of us played for him as a defensive coordinator, and then he became the head coach, which, he really elevated Bethel into what it got really powerful in the early 2000s.
Correct.
And just did a remarkable job of focusing on the people instead of going out and just recruiting anybody. He was a leader of men and a developer, and he had his wingmen with Coach Moore and Coach Thompson and those guys, and Coach Brown, and they were leaders of men, and that really shaped that. But I remember the conversation with Dad going, you're never going to get here. And so going back, a long story short, is my dad had to adapt to how to be a dad from, the early mid-70s to having a kid raised in the late 80s, early 90s, to where the world had changed and was making some significant changes at the time, to where I remember Dad, after a long, hard day, I think I got in a fight with one of my brothers on the farm. And Dad, we went to check irrigation, but, Dad went and grabbed a 6-pack of beer, and I'm sitting there with Dad. He goes, here, drink this at 15, and it was just I'm not saying that was great by any means, but it was a way for Dad to just get, I think, me to look at him differently, that, hey, what is this? I'm not getting my butt chewed out for getting in a fight, even though the fight was probably, knowing myself, is probably my mouth that got me into the trouble in the first place with my brother. So
that's pretty honest.
Yeah, absolutely. If we're going gloves off, I tell people all the time, I wasn't who I needed to be when I was an early teenager and even early in my 20s to lead kids. But those experiences and the people that I've had in my life who impacted me, setting like my mom and dad did, really, really shaped my future and how I coach today, and just some of the things, we try and instill in our guys.
That's an interesting formula, and I appreciate how you linked the conversation and your dad and his maturation of growing into trying to understand this different world with you and where you were going. Even though he had a lot of these core old school values, he was still able to be open-minded enough to walk with you, and knowing that you weren't going to be his guy running his farm.
Right.
And that was done, and he accepted that, and he was pushing you to give you the best optimal chance to do what you do today, knowing that deep down inside of you, that's what you wanted. And your mom's influence on him and that voice in his ear, knowing that she had this booklet that was a piece of gold for her when she was already seeing you today, even though she's not with us.
Right.
She saw you here.
Right.
And that's amazing. And there's other influences that we'll get into. And I know, again, you're humble about it with talking to your brother-in-law about some of the Andale stuff that they're doing and things that you've been able to influence, for lack of a better word right now, and how that community has built their youth football program,
Right.
and some of the experiences you had going through there, and then you've gone off and seen and learned and brought a bunch of stuff back, and people are able to call you and you're able to dump information. And interestingly enough, you don't have a website that they have to pay to go get it. I know you do clinics and things sometimes where you just give your stuff for free.
Right.
And here we are in Newton, Kansas with this contact and going, hey, with you and Slade and other men like that, how do we make things better for the kids? And how do we protect youth sports as we go along? So I guess the next question is, you were in college. We got to live that together. You take your first job in Troy, Kansas as a head football coach. Tell me about that move and where you were, headspace in your life. I mean, that's a big move. You had a lot going on in your personal life. What did that look like, Steve?
Well, prior to that, me and Natalie, I tore my rotator cuff and labrum my junior football season. So, I'm gonna get dates messed up. 2021, 22, around there. 2001, 2002.
We're getting old, bro.
Yeah, we are getting old. And I always told Dad that if I hurt myself, with surgery, I was just gonna be done. College sports did not mean to me what high school sports did. And I think there's a lot of people that would say that. I've heard even one of my kids, Brees Hall, who's out in the NFL playing for the Jets, has told our kids all the success at Iowa State he had, with a Heisman run and all that stuff. He cherishes his high school playing time because of the people you're around, the friendships that you built. And so, it was going in. I was at Halstead. Matt McKee resigned from the Andale job. It took a year off. I think he was teaching at Newton, I believe, as a history teacher at Newton, and then got into an administrative world and went over to Halstead. And I remember Coach going there, and I just reached out to him. And I just, hey, Coach, do you want to help with camp? I'm not playing. I have nothing to do. I would love to come help you at camp. So Coach invited me to camp. He's trying to fill a staff. He was wanting to run the old defense that we ran at Andale when I played. And he had two older assistants that it was an adjustment for them. And, I must have did something good, and Coach wanted me to come on and call the defense after that camp and hired me. And so that got my foot in the door. And so, I was able to student teach that there at Halstead for 2 years, Matt's first 2 years, and really set that program up to where Matt, in the third, fourth year, they were winning football games and really turned that program around from being a doormat for 3 or 4 or 5 years maybe, and really instilling hardworking and all that stuff as I really, really got passionate. And, it didn't work out. I got passed up for a PE job, even though I was running the strength and conditioning program for the school at the time. The networking, that's where I didn't understand networking. And, the guy they hired had a father who was networked in with the principal or superintendent or whatever at the time, and who I thought, me going, hey, I'm going to just walk into this job. They're just going to give it to me for all the things I've done. I got blindsided and I didn't get the job, and I did not take that seriously. Not seriously. I took it hard. And we picked up and left town at the time. Me and Natalie were getting ready to get married. We had been dating for 2 years. We were getting ready to get married a month later, and I had no job on nothing. And so you start going into panic mode as a husband. And at the time, Dalton, my stepson Dalton was 3 at the time. And all of a sudden I'm going to be married in a month, and I have to provide for my family. And what am I going to do? And if high school coaching, most head coaching jobs are open in January, February, or March. And so you're looking at that. I'm like, well, is there any assistant jobs opening? Well, then I called Gary. And of course I could have went on and coached at Gary with Gary O'Hare, who, really got Andale really churning. And Coach Schmidt out there has done a great job of carrying that on and building more on that. But, I had a chance to go to work for Gary, but there was a P job at Colwich open. Well, I didn't get that job. And so you're getting punched in the kidney, and you got a wedding coming up. So like I think anybody would do. Luckily, I had a friend of mine who I grew up with, Jake Eck, and went and framed houses for him. And I probably cost him freaking hundreds of dollars for being the worst framer ever. But I remember just the trials and tribulations of doing that, falling off a roof in a month and going, holy smokes, this is what being a father and a leader is doing what you have to. And, I lost my dad 2 years, literally on Father's Day. I was supposed to, and this is bringing up my selfish past, right? All my buddies were going to go out and wakeboard because that's what we did. We got off work and we went into Cheney Lake and wakeboarded. Well, I just met Natalie a week before that, and she wanted to come out, and her and Dalton, to meet my mom and dad. And this is a regret I've always had with life. I ended up calling Natalie and said, hey, it's not going to work out. I'm going to go wakeboarding. Well, my dad passed away the following Thursday. So Natalie, still playfully puts that on me that she didn't get to meet my dad. But, I remember when my dad passed away, a statement that my brother made, and he goes, it's time for you to grow explicit up. And I'm going, so that transitioning and not getting that Halstead job and all of these things just going, landed me to Troy. And, I talk about networking. So coaches, if you're listening to anybody, it's not always, people hear it's not what you know, it's who you know. And there was 2 jobs open. One was Onega, and one was Troy. And being a small-minded South Central Wichita area kid, where in the hell is Troy, Kansas at? And I applied. It was a head coaching job at a little 2A high school. They were successful. Didn't know the background, why the job came open or not. Just applied. They called me up. Literally interviewed. So my wedding was June 4th, 2005. My interview's the following Monday. So Natalie got wined and dined up in Kansas City for our honeymoon and had to go on an interview at Troy America on Monday. And, I got the job. Lucky to find out Dean Huxman at the time was a Bethel graduate, was the superintendent. And did some contact on, so I don't know who the people at Bethel that lied to Mr. Huxman at the time, because I wouldn't have hired myself at the time. Knowing me, I wouldn't have hired myself.
Interesting.
Pretty entitled at the time, felt I knew everything about football, felt I knew everything in the world. And I got up there and took the job, and I show up with, a little fancy haircut, and first day on the job, Don Cash is there. And Don Cash had been the head coach at Troy for 18, 20 years, was close to winning state title, never got there. And he goes, no one's going to take you seriously in this town with that haircut. And he goes, you better shave your head. So the next day I shaved my head, and I've been bald ever since, But what a place to get your first head coaching job in that community. That my heart, I think Natalie's heart, still has a little piece of us up there. I was a head coach there for 4 years. We won a lot of football games up there and played in a lot of big games. We never got over the hump. We won 3 playoff games. Always ran into somebody bigger and badder and smarter. And, the things I always laugh and go, God, if I knew what I knew now, we probably could have eked out some of those wins and won one there. Because we had the talent. But that town allowed me to grow up and really, there's some controversy that Derek Jasper, who the head coach there is now, should have got the job when I got it. But at the time, I think he didn't have the right certification. He dragged on, and I don't know what happened. But Derek knows this. I tell Derek all the time that he should have had that job, and he just laughed. He goes, well, you just made my job easier when I got it because there was nothing I could do wrong. You already did that. And so we have that running joke. But that town, man, allowed me to grow up, the Donnie Husses, Julie Brown at the time. I mean, really took us in. And what was funny is me and Natalie are 22, 23 years old up there with Dalton as 4-year-old, and us starting our family, that's where Tia and Brock were born up in St. Joe, Missouri. And I mean, that town helped me grow up. it was a very special place that I learned a lot about football. And going through that and the process of building guys, and I was young and dumb, and it was fly by the seat of my pants, trying to bring up life skills like I learned from Coach McKee, and then from then, I my mom passed away my 4th year on Thanksgiving morning back home. And I took that very hard, and it rocked me, and went into a very dark place that winter, and knew that I wanted my kids, I wanted Tia and Dalton and Brock to get back to being around family. Because we, as much as you live, Troy's 3.5 hours away, 3 hours away, you don't get back as much. And man, I got homesick really bad, and we wanted to get back to family, but even though we were winning at Troy, the places, I applied at Concordia and interviewed, Clay Center, I could go on and on at places I applied that they just weren't going to take a chance on me. And so with connections again, my coaches at Andale knew, and Harry Hester, who was a rival coach of mine at McLouth at the time, knew Rick Wheeler, the head coach at Wichita Heights and athletic director, and he knew that he was having a defensive coordinator job come open. And I'm going, do I want to step down and be a assistant coach again? I know it all. We're 31-11 at Troy America. My God, you're just the greatest gift. And, I remember thinking about it, and Rick started calling some of my guys, because Harry gave Rick my name, and Harry gave me Rick's number and stuff. And I remember calling Rick, and Rick, if you know Rick, Rick's not one of those guys that's going to jump out of your seat or pants and make you feel excited about being there, because he had been there, done that. He had such a exclusive coaching tree that he's built, and under guys, leaders of men that he has just produced out of his tree. And, some of my guys at Andale, who had connections with him, Gary O'Hare, Ted Easter. Those guys were talking to Rick, and because Rick was president. I think Rick was the president of the Kansas Football Coach Association at the time, and he started asking those guys, and they're like, Stevie would, my name was Stevie to all those guys. Stevie would be great, and I'm like, first of all, we got to lose that nickname. Yeah, I'd be coaching people. My name's not gonna be Stevie.
You just brought it back.
Yeah, exactly. So, man, at the time, Rick was very successful and really turned around a doormat football program. Heights had never, been a 500 football team in existence. I think Heights opened up. Heights people don't get mad. I think Heights was opened up in 60. Well, Northwest's newest school built in 68. I think Heights was built in maybe the late 50s. And I know they very, very struggled until Rick got there. Rick was an assistant coach there, left and kind of took my path, went into a small school, Lincoln, and then his contacts brought him back to be the head coach. And, Rick is the winningest coach at Heights history now. And, we were fortunate, but he never had, there was always a hurdle. He always ran into Randy Dryling's Hutch teams that won 7 football titles in a row. He always ran into a Junction City that won a state title. He always ran into a tough Manhattan team. There was always somebody. And I don't know if lightning struck at the time, but we struggled. We were 2-4. I was terrible. There was a lot of me and him going back and forth, me trying to be a better assistant, adapting to what he wanted me to do, but I just didn't have the knowledge to run what he wanted me to do. And I remember him coming to me. We're getting ready to start district, and at the time it's Derby, Southeast, and East, and Heights hadn't been beat East in 2 years. Arthur and Bryce Brown just came through that program. Derby was just now getting ready to start rolling with Coach Clark. There was no state title there, but the foundations and bricks he built to get on the next level to where he is at now was being built to that process in 2009. And that was my first year as DC, and I remember we're getting ready to start district. He goes, "We're not too far off with what you do, but let's go, and I trust you to do what you want to do." And we just simply played base fundamental football, and that we got on a hot streak. And when I say hot streak, it went, we beat East, everybody's going, oh, big deal. Well, then we slowed down Joe Randall, who went and played at Oklahoma State, played for the Cowboys. We slowed him down, and then we go into Derby, and we shut out Derby. And all of a sudden, we're rolling. and we go on to go to the state title game and get massacred by a very good Olathe North team. But all of a sudden, the lightning was there and it clicked. And that offseason, I remember Rick going, "It's yours. Do what you need to do." And it took a lot for that guy having that kind of faith in me to go on, "Hey, this guy's got something. He's got something that he's brought to us." And that was the first time. Sure. Oh man, yeah, it was exciting because that was the first time Heights had won a second-round playoff game. Oh, it just the way the district set up regionally, we just ran into a monster at the time, and man, we went off and won a state title the next year. Rattled off 25 straight wins, had some incredible athletes at the time at Heights, from Perry Ellis to Evan Wessel for you WSU fans, Matt Reed, Oklahoma Wrestler, Dap to Shazier, Oklahoma Wrestling. I mean, the girls, I think off Coach Pulliam's team, I think 11 out of 13 girls went on to play Division I basketball. Joe Auer, and a tremendous leader of men down there, who just keeps winning at Heights basketball. Yeah. The Perry Ellis, the Terrence Moores, the Gavin Thurmans, the people that we brought through their women's soccer. I mean, baseball with Jeff Topping. It was just such a special time at that high school with the right kids and the right coaches at the right time turned into that place to have. I mean, we won a state wrestling title there, state football, wrestling, basketball. Both boys and girls won basketball. Volleyball qualified for the state tournament. Girls soccer was winning a lot of games. We took third at the track meet, boys track. We didn't even know we had a chance. Coach Wheeler calls us up, chewing us out because we're not there to get our team trophy. We had no idea that we were going to put up enough points on the board. But man, such a special place, and how to build a staff and really being able to organize a big school program was phenomenal for me. And that's, and Rick, I think if you told Rick what a great coach he was, you'd get the same response from me. Well, sure, whatever, and Rick, and I tell Rick all the time, like, a lot of my success in our building at Northwest is the same model that he approached at Heights. And I think that's where I really, really grew up and said, you have someone that you can really learn from. Whether you guys got along all the time or not, this was a guy that was a leader of men who could shape and mold coaches and kids at the same time. My best learning was those 3 years I was at Heights.
It's awesome.
And, and that projected me to where we are at Northwest today.
So it sounds like you've borrowed and taken a piece from starting with your mom and dad and your family. But then throughout, you've run into these, I call them, angels, mentors, people that are just brought into your life. And it's your choice to see them or not, but there's a series, and all those people, I mean, I just heard you connect them to other people that have different talents and skill sets. Right. For us to be as blessed as we are to have had those experiences because of sports and athletics and activities that we get to be involved with. And it's so frustrating to see people monetize that.
Yeah. It's, first of all, you got to admit, I learned this from, it's come with some kind of personal growth from me, kind of getting an entrepreneur spirit. I've been able to meet some really, really quality individuals outside the realm of sports and education. And one of the things that was ingrained in me about 5 years ago when I kind of went out on this and tried to make some extra income as well, as success leaves clues. And if Rick was able to turn this program around, and I didn't walk into the situation that he did at Heights that I did at Northwest. Weston Sharks is a very, winning coach down here in the City League, a City League legend, so he didn't leave the cupboard quite bare like it was for Rick. We just started to build and take that plug and play model and over. But, from these leaders, why try to go reinvent the wheel when success has happened before you? And you see that today in society. You see that with other businesses. You see it in other football programs that I see. You see it in the political world today. Is why are people not using what they've learned or models, driving right down the road 20 minutes, and asking simple questions to make yourself better or your community or your family better. It's mind blowing how, I don't know if people are scared to ask. Maybe they're too egotistical to ask, to go, I'm not going to go ask him how he's doing. I mean, there's a lot of clues, we've robbed a lot of things with what we do in life, in business, in sports, that have led to our success. And to not do that's asinine. It's why it's there. The road's paved for you. Now just go add on to what you've learned and build on that and be a servant leader and expand your knowledge to help somebody else. When you talk about people monetizing that, it's kind of the society that everybody's building right now. And I don't know if it's correct or not. I made a comment, can't remember what it was. We were talking about society, and I said, I feel like football is the only thing that is holding some threads together in our society in America.
Dig deeper, Coach. Tell me about that.
But you look at the situation. We're going to go off COVID, and everybody, if you knew me, my face was all over around the COVID time in Wichita fighting for my kids. And so, you look at that time. What was it planned? I don't know. I hope not. I hope there aren't those people in this world that are that big of scumbags to go try to get our depopulation or whatever. Everybody's crazy theories out there, right? We go down a rabbit hole and take this another way.
Yeah.
But, the fabric of people with different backgrounds being able to come together for a common cause and a common direction is getting lost in this, in society. It is, everybody is looking for me. And when this country thrived, people were working together and people were striving for greatness. And that's what football is. You can't have 11 people with their own agenda. You can't have a coaching staff of 10 people with your own agenda. It does not work.
Right.
And that is what, this game and mentors of mine have really, really honed to me, is that's what we do great at where I'm at, is being able to get people and put them in this ball and move them in one direction. And I think that's the struggle right now with youth sports, high school sports, college sports, and NFL. It's not watered down. It's, I'm trying to think the best word to describe it. It's selfish. It's the whole point of team sports is gone in my mind. And there have been influencers that have made that happen. And it's a shame.
We've exercised this conversation with each other before, as we're trying to work out the potential of this new culture we're building, right? And you always got to try to find, it is what it is, and we have to play in the system. What are the pros and cons? But you go through the era that we come through, and we have coaches that have built guys like us, and I love and appreciate each and every one of you deeply. There's times when I've had guys who were real hard on me, and I deserved every bit of it, and I didn't get it. And I still struggle because of me. I was not always the best teammate, and I acted the role and I played the part, but I didn't really get it. I'm getting it better now as an adult, but I still struggle with it because of my personal selfishness and my ego. And I had coaches that saw right through that, but they also saw potential, and they put me in situations that I would have walked away from if I could have. So when you see these things going on with like the portal that's opened up right now, where coaches push on athletes, and these athletes need to be put through a little bit of a crucible to earn their position or their right on that squad or that team, or maybe this coach seeing 3D sees things in that athlete that they need to go through something. And maybe parents and other people don't see it because they're too close to it, but that coach will see it. And they're able to put this athlete through a crucible to where they want them to break through a barrier for their personal gain, so the team can benefit from that. And so there's a lot of things that you guys do in the coaching world that a lot of novice people that haven't really been deep in it and haven't been through the books that we've been through and haven't had the mentors that we've had that have coached us throughout the years, the family members, where it's like, what happens when that kid gets to pull the plug on that coach?
Right.
Well, then you're pulling the plug on your team too.
Yep.
And in our era, up until not too long ago, that was one of the beautiful things about having a great coach where you go back 10 years later and say, dude, I'm sorry and I love you and thank you for putting me through that. And that coach will look at you and smile and go, thank God he grew up. Thank God they were one of the few that got it. And I feel like that's being stripped away.
Well,
Am I not seeing this correctly? Because you're deep in it, man. You've got NFL players, you've got D1 athletes, you've got prospects, you've got big colleges calling you on kiddos. I mean, you're deep in it, right?
You see this at every level. You see it at the high school level. So let's pick that apart, right?
Yeah.
So I understand the portal argument for a kid that made a bad decision. Let's take my situation with some of my kids. In 2020 COVID, right? You couldn't get on campus. You had to take virtual visits, right? So you couldn't go on campus. Now, let's say that kid goes and he looks at the website. The pictures are great. Of course, the coach is showing all the swag, the gear, the branding, the fans, the girls, whatever.
Right.
Whatever it is, right? Well, all of a sudden, you walk in. You've had this experience coming from San Antonio to North Newton, Texas. Where are we going as soon as you got off the plane? I mean, you and me have talked about that. As you're driving, all of a sudden, hey, don't worry, I'm not going to go take you out in the farm and kill you. Where are we going? And so you get on campus and you're going, this isn't what you sold me on. Or that coach is a stair climber and you get this good kid. And then all of a sudden that coach leaves. But that's the argument I get for a kid to leave, is that this was not what you signed up for, right? We've all done that. I've made hundreds of millions of mistakes of signing up for something I didn't think it was.
Right.
We've all done that. We've bought something that we went, this is not what I wanted, right? But
must have been from Wish.
Right, yeah, right. Or my kids are trying to buy Temu stuff now.
Yeah.
Right? So you have that in the college realm. And you have that, and then you have those people that are going, this kid is selfish. This kid is this. He's being a crybaby. He's leaving because of this. I understand the portal when that happens to a kid. Maybe your coach leaves, because I don't care what anybody says. The connections that you make. I'll take Brees Hall, for example. If you don't know who Brees Hall is, Brees played for me, was an All-American out of high school, went to Iowa State, had a great career at Iowa State, got drafted by the Jets. He went to Iowa State because of the connection he made with his recruiting coordinator, the offensive coordinator at Iowa State, Nate Shieldhouse, who's a Kansas City Rockhurst native, great guy. Well, I consider now a friend that I can call on speed dial for anything. The connection that they had, nobody was going to beat Iowa State on Brees. Nobody. And then you throw in a quality coach and mentor in Matt Campbell at Iowa State, who people can say what they want to. That guy's been in my office, one of the down-to-earth, most humble men, and he's younger than me. So more hats off to that guy.
Absolutely.
But people go, Brees went to Iowa State because of Matt Campbell and Nate Shieldhouse. Now, would have Brees stayed at Iowa State if Coach Campbell would have went and got the Notre Dame job or the Ohio State job or the Nebraska job that the rumors were swirling? Would he have stayed? Or would he if he went with those guys? I don't know.
Got it.
But I understand when a kid transfers because of that. I get it. I had a situation, Deron Thompson, a running back of mine that went Division I, went to Colorado State, had a great connection with those guys and his coordinator. Mike Bobo, the defense coordinator at Georgia, got that job, walked up to him and said, you're not the back we want. Well, are you going to stay there and not have a chance, or are you going to transfer and go? And then he went on to KU and ended up having a great career. I'm proud of him now. He's coaching for a great friend of mine in Drew Hudgens at Blue Valley North. He's a linebacker coach there. Magical. Awesome. But here's the problem. When you look at it for a coaching perspective in the portal, let's say you're Freeman at Notre Dame. You guys just underachieved year one. Year two, do you think the Notre Dame faithful are going to be happy with a 500 record at Notre Dame? No. You're on the hot seat. You got to win at year three or you're done.
Yeah, done. End of story.
End of story. And so you're looking at Coach Freeman. I believe he has four or five kids. He's a young man, beautiful wife, and all of a sudden you're gone. You're fired. So I understand as a coach going and getting new players. That's the rules they're playing with right now. I understand that. But what people aren't seeing is the selfishness that it's teaching, because it trickles down to high school. You know, we've had kids leave Northwest because it wasn't their style or they weren't playing. We've had kids come into our program because they've seen an opportunity to play. Maybe they wanted to come for the college connections that we have. I don't know, for whatever it's worth. But now you're starting to have it trickle down to the youth sports, to where it was, I'm in a lot of forums, and it was funny. A baseball coach was talking about, have any of you ever had a 8 under, 9 under dad tell you he's changing teams because of the level exposure at 8 years old and 9 years old? What is that, second grade?
Yeah.
That his kid isn't getting the appropriate exposure for their kid. That's crazy. That's what's wrong with youth sports right now, is that everybody is looking for the next LeBron James. You know, the big story right now in youth sports is this kid, baby Gronk. They're already setting this kid up to fail. Ugh. Can you imagine? I remember being at Bethel College. LeBron James was in high school. I remember reading the Sports Illustrated in the mods.
Yeah, I remember that.
I'm reading this going,
magazine, yeah.
This kid, they're comparing this guy to Michael Jordan. What if he would have failed? What about the new guy like the Spurs just drafted, right? The next greatest thing ever, right? The ultimate prospect. What if he fails? And now all of these parents are talking to their 8 and 9-year-old kids about their professional future. That's crazy. Mm-hmm. And I know growing up, you know, we all have pipe dreams. I'm going to go play in the NFL and blah, blah. But there are people projecting their wants on their kids, and it's ruining sports in general. And that's where I believe we are. And I call them helicopter parents. They are ruining it, the love of the game for these kids. I'll be honest with you. There's times I feel like we are running a business in my own program now. And that love of the game, the amount of hours that kids are being asked to commit, it's a lot. And I know there's some discussions right now in Kansas State High School Association with summer regulations. Are we too stringent? Do we need to open this thing up more? Do we need to cut it down more? I don't know if the problem's at the high school level. Yeah. I think the program is having underqualified people coaching our directional and getting our development. That's why when Brock was second, we started the Grizzly organization selfishly. Jaron Trotter at the time was a Northwest grad, went on and played at Missouri State, knew that the district wasn't too fond on me starting this organization and being the director. So Jaron, took that off my hands and built that. We were very hands-on for the first 3 years, but it just kind of took off from where it is. And those guys have done a great job to it. But what people are not seeing is they're worried about national rankings and getting their kids to be rated. Well, I'm sorry, an 8th grader, by the time they're a 14, 15-year-old kid, compared to when they're 18 or 19, there's a thing called puberty and testosterone that I don't know if people know about that changes kids. And you might have been the biggest, baddest thing in 4th or 5th grade.
Right.
But I've seen those 4th and 5th grade studs, the next Barry Sanders, the next yada, 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 not even finish their high school career.
Right.
That's pretty overwhelming. For me, I've seen the goods, the bads of it. And there's an issue with it. And it's projecting these kids that they are going to be this. They are going to do that. That's a lot of pressure for a kid. You wonder why we have mental health, anxiety, like crazy now. Can you imagine what we're expecting out of kids now?
Yeah,
It's crazy.
and it's just fueled up with all these medias that we have and the way they are designing these medias, and what it's doing to our kiddos and their brains, on top of all these other expectations that we're cramming in the pressure cooker, and then medications on top of all that, instead of trying to figure out physical activity and diets and some of the things you're focusing on with your teams now. Especially with your new guy that you got coming in, I just see so much great energy around that. And again, I don't want to go too far into that because I know you're still developing things and you guys are working on stuff, but I'm really excited about where that takes your program to that next level.
Well, it's surrounding yourself with people that you feel are better than you in that aspect. You know, I'm 42. My disconnect of what's going on in the weight rooms now at a high level are gone. My next phase in life is not going to be the greatest strength and conditioning coordinator. I felt that 2 to 3 years ago. I wanted to phase myself out. And that's what it's about is surrounding yourself with the right tools, people that have better knowledge you, or people that you can go get the knowledge from in the networking aspect. Mm-hmm. It's huge. You know, we've developed a very broad and wide, vast networking of college guys and coaches, because of we never know when we need to help the next kid out. We never know when we have the next Andy Ortiz that needs to get the heck out of the community right now to grow up. Yeah. Or the Steve Martin that needs to go away and grow up and get punched in the face, right?
Yeah.
Or just that
but
guy
they're not going to be your Notre Dame running back, but they'll be really good.
100%.
And they'll get an education.
Right.
And they'll have a chance to be around some people to coach them up at the level they need it.
Right. And some people need to hear this. And this I'm telling you, when it comes to recruiting, I've seen some of the best athletes not go to the high level because of their stature. What you have to understand, if there's parents listening, because we've had a lot of success in sending kids at the highest level at Northwest. We've had 14 kids in 11 years go Division I football at the highest level, from Oklahoma, Iowa State on down to Missouri State, right? From the FCS to the Division I level. These kids have to fit cookie cutter molds. And what I mean by that, if you're not a lineman, Brock Martin, my son, wants to go play in the NFL. He wants to go play at Notre Dame or Michigan like his dad did.
Right.
Well, guess what? Brock had to be self-aware. Googled the other day, how tall do I have to be to go play this level?
6'3", 6'4".
The minimum lineman they'll take is 6'3", and they will move you to center to play that.
Yeah.
Jason Kelsey, the best center in the world, is the shortest offensive lineman in the league, I believe, at 6'3".
Yeah, and that's minimum.
And so you have to understand as a parent, if your kid is not running XYZ in the 40-yard dash, if he's not this height or this weight at a level, linebacker, you got to be 6 foot or taller. If you're under 6 foot, I don't care who you are. You're not going to play Division I level. I had one of the best linebackers I will ever coach in Josh Carter that is down being an All-American at Southwestern. Sorry, Bethel, but he went there.
Yeah.
And, but that's where he's been a 2-time All-American. We've had guys that explosive running backs. Roy Johnson played with Breece Hall. Roy was 5'5", 160 pounds soaking wet, but you couldn't tackle him.
Quick.
Yeah. You have to understand is the only people getting away is genetics. And you can think that's harsh, but I'm sorry. That's the world the NCAA lives in, those coaches. Nick Saban is not going to walk in and talk to a 5'11", 230-pound offensive lineman.
Correct. That's facts.
It's not. And that's what
Even if they're freak athletes. We've seen them.
Yeah.
We played with them.
Yeah. Shoot, Tavita Hafoka.
Yeah, ridiculous.
I know if you're a Beth guy and you listen to this and you were around Bethel at the time, Burf.
Yeah.
Those guys are creatures. It didn't work out for them at whatever level, at that high level in college, but they were with us at playing NAIA football. Like, there is so much talent. Quit boxing your kids' success and failure on playing Division I sports. It's about teaching you guys life skills to be able to be a leader of men, be able to be a husband, a great father, a great CEO of a company that we have a lot of our brothers, our Bethel brothers that are that. Heck, be the best mechanic in your shop. whatever it is. That's what sports are about. And we've lost focus of that because of the monetization and people living through people. Let your kids have fun. Let them have fun. Because trust me, when they get to my level in high school, we're going to start not having as much fun because, of course, we want to win, but we also know that we're trying to help our kids because of our situation. I'm trying to get our kids out of Wichita into better places for themselves. That has always been my goal. My goal has never been a state title. My goal is to be that influencer on those guys' lives to help give them in the right networks and avenues to go on and play the next level. And I know there's going to be coaches that go, that's wrong. That's wrong. But that's why I tell kids, if you do X, Y, Z, I will find you a home to get you out of this community and put you on a better path. That's why I tell my kids. When a dad brings me in, I'm not going to promise Brock Martin or some of his buddies, you're going to go play Division I football. I can't do that.
Well, you know what the chart looks like.
Yeah.
And you have these coaches on
100%.
speed dial, and they have you on speed dial.
Case in point, yesterday, a sophomore, John Michael Fountain, got offered by Iowa State because of our connections with him. He's a great genetic freak. John Mike's 6'1", 205 pounds, big, long wavelength, can run like a deer. As a sophomore linebacker, it's genetics. It's physical. It's what you have to offer them. They are looking for the next baddest thing. Mm-hmm. The 5'10", 220-pound lineman, like I was coming out of high school, is a dime a dozen.
Yeah.
They can find them at the quick trip down the street.
And they got good 40s, and they got verticals, and they're freak athletes. They're just not the side, because you have the same freak athlete in a 6'2" frame that makes sense for what they're running.
100%. Some of my best players that have went on to the biggest level weren't my best football players at those positions, but they fit the mold.
Yeah.
And that's what so many people do not understand that. And they're so many times, oh, coach, this is your next running back in second grade. I'm like, holy, come on. What if the kid decides that he likes Twinkies tomorrow like I did and gains 30 pounds,
Happens.
Yeah. I mean, the kid walks into Quick Trip like I do and looks at a donut and gains 10 pounds, You just, let these kids have fun. That's what's going on in youth sports. Have fun. Do we all like to win? Yes. That's why America was built into one of the best countries in the world, because we like to win. We're competitive, but we're taking that away from people. And that's why you're starting to see some other countries catch up to us, because we've lost that edge. And that's what youth sports has it's starting out to trickle down to that level, to where I am very concerned what does high school sports look like in the next 10, 15, 20 years from now. It's pretty scary. I mean, my livelihood is building young men and coaching and stuff. Where are we going from here? And there's going to have to be a lot of leaders that lock arms and say, this is enough.
Well, Coach, let's make that happen. I mean, I know we've had some discussions, and I want to ask you as we start closing this thing down, because I got a feeling we're going to have other conversations, because this is near and dear to my heart. It's almost frustrating, as if you give a kid, there's a big discussion, so I'm going to take it a little bit left here. There's discussions with kids that, you got to meet a quota for whatever your ethnicity is for Harvard. So a kid may get into Harvard because of that marker. That kid would have came to Bethel, and yes, still been challenged. They don't just take anybody, but ended up being a CEO of a company or a director of something and made impact in some industry. They end up going to Harvard and not making it. And then they think that just wasn't for them, because they didn't get the other experience that they were really qualified for.
Right.
And I just don't want us to be pushing our kids into places trying to be molds that they're not,
right.
But still building them to be the best they can be. As you've already described, is you want your kiddos, you as a coach can see the good, bad, and ugly, and you're not so close like some of their parents, where you're able to love them differently.
Yeah.
And if it wasn't for those guys in my life, I wouldn't be here. And I'm so grateful that there was people that loved me differently, but loved me enough to just shoot me straight and put some reality into me, but still let me live and have fun and dream a little. But were real direct at some point in life when it was time to be direct. They let me know, hey, dude, you need to grow up.
Right.
And this is what it's going to look like. And here's the gifts that I see that you have, and they're not nothing.
Right.
And you can go do great things with them.
Right.
And there's 10 other people with different gifts Don't want to be that guy. Be you, and they'll love you for that.
Right.
How do we teach that in the masses, Coach?
Well, I think it's I think it's getting people on the right platform and banding together and seeing there's not if people don't see a need for change, it's not going to change. And so the thing is educating the masses and what does this look like? I have a good friend named Jude Davila, has partnered with a company. He's out of Kansas City. He used to run all the I don't want to insult Jude, but Jude was the liaison for, let's say Tyreek Hill moves in and he needs to get things done around and find him an apartment and a car and go make those deals. So Jude saw the need with some friends of his through the Professional Football Network, found a platform to help parents and educate people on what does going to college and stuff look like, and being able to take out the people that are preying on them. Right? The problem we have is people are preying on kids and families. That's what's happening right now.
Absolutely.
When it comes to club sports, it's about putting money in people's pockets, so where that's their livelihood, right? So the game is not focused on developmental. It's became a business for people, and that's what people are not seeing in the sports world at the youth level. And so you got guys like Jude that are trying to stop in professional. I think Gary Payton. They're involved in the NFL Players Association. I just posted on Facebook for this platform. So if you're looking for me, find me on Facebook, and I put it on there. But it's a platform for people from the youth level to high school that is going to mentor people on the what are you looking for in a college? Expanding on, to be wary of the NIL stuff and all that stuff. That's a whole nother podcast, right?
Yeah.
But to talk about how to avoid going to the wrong situations and what things your kid needs for the educational aspect of the youth sports and the high school sports and college. And it's a free platform. I think it gets in deeper as you become more serious and, down the recruiting ran and all that ran.
Yeah.
But it's a very good platform of guys like Gary Payton, played for the Seattle Supersonics, professional athletes that are helping have those relationships and communication with these people on this type of thing. It's really, you came back to how do we get that? It's going to take guys, Andy, I know what you guys are building here at Newton. I think it's going to be pretty awesome to see when you guys get that all, with the whole Railer community coming together with your youth sports. And I think it's something that, the people that are out at Andale have figured out. I don't know about other sports, but you see that's what has been done at Derby and what Brandon has built at Derby football. You look at, we were just scrimmaging up at Mill Valley last week, and what Joel Appleby has done at Mill Valley and really built the community around its sports production. And I think by leaders focusing on what they can control at the local level will help that whole end goal of getting that stuff out of the youth sports and high school and be able to educate people in the right way, because there are some warriors and heroes out in these communities that you only hear about winning state titles. You only look at him, he's just winning football. No, Joel Appleby's a good friend of mine, and we lost to him twice in the state title game. So for me, we took some humble pie and went up there this offseason and learned about and it says what is Joel doing to set their program apart, and it's the pouring into the people in his community, what he's built. And so that's maybe a good guy to get on here and talk about is Joel, about having it, because there are so many special people, like I said, that are sitting next to us at church, or you pass through at Quick Trip getting a coffee in the morning, that can make a big change in people's lives. But people are too, I think we were talking about, selfish or egotistical to just ask.
Yeah.
Trust me, that was hard to call Joel and say, hey, you beat us 2 years in a row. Can we come up and see what you're doing? I want to know.
And for him to have the olive branch to say, yeah, dude, come on, coach.
Oh, remarkable. I always thought very worldly of Coach Appleby, but after that, I think the world of him for that. Because there's a lot of coaches that are very guarded. Yeah. Like they have this secret.
Yeah.
You learned it from someone else. Get over yourself. Nothing we take, it was original.
That's good.
Everybody, no matter what you do, you're always taking bits and pieces of something. From somebody in whatever world, whether you're in the media, right, whatever. we're always taking. So you got to step back and get over yourself a little bit, and that's what a lot of people need to do, and myself included. We got to push ourselves away from the table and go. We got here because someone else taught us. Why are we not being that leader? Why are we not helping other people?
That's good. That's so good, Coach. And this is a loaded question because I know you, but I need to ask it. What is Coach Martin curious about right now?
Oh, good
There's 5
Lordy.
things. That's all go right through your eyes.
Yeah, like,
Well, you nail down one of them. What are you curious about when it comes to youth sports and athletics? Is it projecting into the future? Is it something going on right now in your program? Is it some new technology? Is it a new person that you've latched on to and something you're learning from them? What is Coach Martin curious about when it comes to coaching and the future of sports?
a big thing for me, and I've been on this journey for about 5 years now, is I'm curious on what coaches are doing for their mental health and sanity. 5 years ago, I was lucky enough to sit down with a gentleman that made me realize that my family and my kids haven't experienced anything. I always made the joke that my family going on vacation, someone had to die in St. Louis, where I have some relatives to go. That was a vacation.
Yeah.
That was a vacation for me. And so it's funny as you always want to say you don't want to be like your family, like your parents, right? You want to be better and stuff. And you find yourself in mimicking their lifestyle. And it wasn't farming for me, it was coaching. And so I think I've become better by getting away from my program, and whether that's traveling with your family, whether that's finding some hobby, some business. I know some of my friends, coaching friends, got into real estate. To get away from it. It's just if you don't have anything as a coach, I'm just speaking from it. Your brain thinks about that all the time, and the best thing for me was me turning that part of the brain off and thinking and focusing on that other, and that's a scary world because all of a sudden then you start focusing. So it's, you have that, but I'm curious what are coaches doing to take care of their mental health? It's a grind. A lot of things, our health takes a toll. I know I go on these roller coasters with my lifestyle and healthy. It's just we are always on a roller coaster, in season, out of season, preseason. That's what I'm curious is what are my brothers out there doing for their sanity? How are they staying sane because of the expectations that we have on us from parents, expectations from school, our family? How are you coping with that? How are you turning that into a positive, I guess, is what I'm very curious about.
Yeah.
It's been a goal of mine to be able to step away from the coaching aspect, to shut my brain off, to refocus and re-energize. My principal laughs at me all the time. He goes, that's what summers are for, to go on vacation. And I go, not really. That's when high school sports in Kansas, we don't get to do anything football wise till June. So June, it's on. So, so in December, I'm worn out because we've been going, it's the day after Memorial Day. And hopefully, God grant it, we're working till Thanksgiving weekend. That's the goal. That's a 6-month grind.
Yeah.
So, and it's hardcore. It's not the 3 o'clock to 6 o'clock practice and the 7 o'clock game to 9 o'clock that wears you out. That's fun. That's easy. Those are coaching a football game on Friday night at 7 o'clock is easy. It's the other stuff. It's the meeting. It's the film study. It's the stats. It's the program management, the paperwork, everything else that no one sees. I think you have a pretty lush, kick-ass job.
Right.
And, and I know there's a lot of us that get buried under that. And so finding that outlet, what's your outlet? Is it woodworking? Is it traveling? Is it whatever, collecting coins? I don't know.
Yeah.
Out there with a metal direct, fishing. I don't know. But that's what I'm curious about these days is what are my guys doing to stay healthy, stay fresh?
That's good, Coach. Well, I really appreciate it. It's been fun to watch you and the entrepreneurial side of you too, knowing that's always been there, especially with your roots and your family and on your brothers and your sister. Y'all just have that gene. You grew up on a farm.
Yeah, you don't think of it though.
Yeah.
I think you said that last summer to me, and I go, my dad was an entrepreneur, wasn't he? Being a farmer, you just don't think of that like that. At 41, it's like, duh.
Yeah.
You know, it's
Yeah.
like, holy smokes.
Yeah,
So,
I mean, and then you have to have multiple sources of income because of how he was operating and all the different stuff he had to manage. I mean, that's hardcore entrepreneur. That's the biggest risk entrepreneur, in my opinion, that we have.
yeah.
Farmers aren't no joke, and they work hard for it. But if you can get to that level, there's some reward behind it. But it's not very many get there.
Yep.
So, hey, Coach, I appreciate you, man. Thank you for taking time. I know we'll probably do this again. I want to unpack some more of this. I'm curious about the interactions we get from our community, and then some communities outside of us that we were able to touch through this conversation. And just know that our coaching tree and our coaching lineages is very important to us, and the legacies that we get to pour into were already there for us to take advantage of. And I'm hoping that this reaches the right coach, the right young guy maybe wanting to go into coaching or thinking about it, or the guy that's been there for 15 years and needing to make some changes. And the one vulnerable piece for me is not really the family thing, because I've seen you get jazzed up about it. I know how much you love your family and your parents and what they were able to provide for you as a platform to grow on, is the vulnerability with the mental health side of what your career field does and pushes. And I know the majority of guys in my life that I look up to and that I just talked to Ben Benavides.
Yep.
Yesterday. He is now the athletic director at the Edgewood School District, and I can't tell you how big that school is.
Right.
But they've got 2 pretty good-sized high schools that I know of, and they've got a bunch of stuff going on within that. The Alamo Stadium, I believe, is their stadium downtown San Antonio, and that alone is just a big, gargantuan responsibility. That, you know, he was a coach. He's going to miss coaching. He's been wired that way his whole life, but now he's taking on this athletic director position. And I'm looking forward to going and spending time with him and figuring out, hey, coach, what are you doing? But that point being made is those are the people in my life. They're you.
Right.
They're Ben. You know, I watch Philip and I cheer him on. He comes from my neighborhood. He's now there coaching and pouring back in with Doug, which is another one of our guys. And I can go on and on and on.
Yep.
We had just another one of our guys here a few weeks ago. We came to visit. And I know we couldn't all hook up together, but he was here. We barbecued and talked about where he's at and what he's doing in his life. And it's just amazing to me what we get to do. And we got this platform, and these relationships were built through sports.
Yeah.
And so
people ask me all the time, you know, what do you do for a living? You know, I used to say I coach and get to have fun with kids, and now he goes, you're a teacher too. But like, if you're really enjoying your job, if you like being around kids, it's like, I'm just another big kid. I'm just older than these guys. So, you know, that's what's fun. And you know, and you know, those guys you just shut out were, you know, teammates of mine, you know, and it's pretty cool watching us all come from Little Bethel College up in, you know, North Newton, Kansas, you know, who not a lot of people even know exists, but but, you know, a special place that builds great human beings and leaders. So Andy, thanks for having me on, man. I appreciate it.
Coach, love you, dude.
Love you, man. Yep.
See ya.